Hey, so I'm back. Um, it's the next day. I'm not taking any breaks. I'm gonna get done. I'm gonna get completely done with this part of what I'm telling you all today in this moment while we sit here. I didn't take my walk, so I'm going to take my walk afterwards. It is currently, I want to say, I'm not going to guesstimate. I just looked at my watch. It is currently 12:10. So when I'm done with this, I am going to take my walk and then be done with this series of what I'm telling you all. This will lead into the information of where Never Alone come from. Okay, so this is the background of how Never Alone clearly was started. Um, why the passion for it happened. This is that, and then we're gonna talk about basically. I would like to say the testimony part of it. Okay, you see, we back outside where we were. I'm here because the kids are at home, so I'm here. Other than that, I wouldn't get it done. But the next part would be like the discovering part, and then the testimonial part of what we will basically be coaching with. Okay, because we're gonna get to that on what I'm doing. What I'm doing is coaching. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to a better understanding of that. Um, Yesterday when we were talking about my mother, and I brought up the word narcissist in that, right? I brought it up and I said, you all will call her a narcissist. I just call her Ruby, right? There's a couple of times that you will hear me say, we're going to get back to that. With this one, I don't want to bypass it. Okay, I don't want to bypass that. Even though I didn't say we're going to get back to it, I did bring up the word narcissist. I brought up that word for a reason, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So I went to school to become a mental health therapist. That is what I wanted to do. That is what I thought was my true passion. So I am not coaching from a place of not knowing. I am coaching from a place of already experience, already worked in the field, already doing certain things and diagnosing, right? Because I did a couple of years with SPMI. And so, for those who don't know, those are your major mental health diagnosis. And so I did a couple of years in those. And then I also worked in dual recovery. That's also those who have an addiction and a mental health, which is the SPMI. I worked with those individuals. And so I'm not speaking from a place of assumption. I actually am talking about things that I either know learning on my own or learning through the workshops and the conference and school and things of that such, right? Learning throughout my mentors and my other peers on how to properly identify and diagnose individuals. I tell people this all the time because I hear people say all the time, narcissist this, narcissist that, and I'm like, God, they're not a narcissist. I hate that word, by the way, because that's just like a new word that people have learned, and then you have other people have come in and made it look as if it may have been true. And I'm not saying what they're saying is incorrect. I'm not saying that. So please don't say that, oh, she's saying that they're wrong. What I'm saying is that in order for them to be considered a narcissist, they have to meet a certain criteria. According to the DSM, we can't just make up these criteria and write it in there and say, oh, yeah, they're a narcissist, and then say, and I added this, because that does not make them a narcissist. What makes them a narcissist is basically exactly what the DSM has said would consider them to be a narcissist. That's what makes them a narcissist. And so, for that reason, I don't like to assume anything about individuals. I like to know for a fact. Okay. Um, I want to give you all a little understanding so you all can understand where I'm coming from when I say I call Ruby Ruby. I would never put a narcissist onto Ruby. I would never give her that diagnosis. And I want to explain something to you. So this morning what I did was I brought out, you got it. I brought it out. I brought out my nice little DSM, because I want to give you all a better understanding of exactly what I'm saying. So you have a cluster. You have cluster A and cluster B personality disorders, so the schizophrenics, and that is in your cluster A. And then in your cluster B, you have the borderlines and the historics and the narcissists and the antisocials and the others in that one, right? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that really quick. We're gonna get into it, and then I'm gonna go back to what I was saying, so that you all can understand where I'm coming from when I say these things. We associate people with things that don't ascribe to them. Why don't they ascribe to them? Because there's so many other things that can go along with it. And I'm just going to say this very quickly. So, for instance, antisocial antisocial personality disorder, right? The likelihood of developing antisocial personality disorder in an adult life is increased in the individual experience childhood onset of conduct disorder before the age of 10, and accompanying attention disorder, which is ADHD, child abuse or neglect, unstable in the parenting and inconsistent parenting discipline may increase the likelihood that conduct disorder will evolve into an antisocial personality disorder. It is said, though, individuals antisocial, I'm sorry, my pages are moving. Individual with antisocial personality disorder may also experience dysphoria, including complaints of tension, inability to tolerate boredom, and depressing mood. La 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 la. We're going to keep going on a little bit. It says then in individuals with antisocial personality disorders also often have personality features that meet criteria for other personality disorders, particular borderline, historic, and narcissist personality disorders. I only point that out because people often will associate another personality for another personality because they don't understand how the personalities work. Okay. And so I wanted to point that out. Me knowing how they work, I know Ruby is not a narcissist, nor would Ruby be an antisocial? Okay, but there is something in here that Ruby most definitely she fits the criteria. Okay, she fits it. She's there. And for those who fits in this field, they would be able to say, oh yeah, that's Ruby. Okay, that would most definitely be her. FYI, this morning I spoke with my mother and I let her know that I was doing this and that I was talking about her, and I told her, I said, if you ever see this, or if you ever have someone who's seen it and they come and they say, oh man, your daughter was up and she was talking about you and she calls you a motherfucker. I said, Mama, I want you to know it wasn't out of disrespect. It's just who you was at that particular time. Okay. It's just who you was. And she said, dang, a motherfucker. I said, yeah. Yeah, you was that. She said, I always thought maybe a little bitch or something. I said, no, I mean, maybe to you, but to those outside looking in, you was a. And I didn't say it twice because I only said it one time. I didn't need to repeat that word. That is still my mother, and respect is very much so due. So I do not curse in front of my mother or around my mother. Don't drink, don't smoke. I don't drink or smoke anyway, but if I did, I wouldn't do it around my mother either. And so those are just things that a form of respect. I don't do those things in front of other adults that I consider to be elders. That was the generation I grew up in. That was just certain things we didn't do. So I don't do that. And so I only repeated it once, and then after that she said, dang, I didn't know it was that bad. And so I just wanted to point that out, that sometimes we are associating people with things that do not align with them. They do not. So my mother is most definitely not a narcissist, nor was my ex-husband. Um, they were not that. As a matter of fact, if you all would like, I would even tell you what it would take to be, according to the DSM, and according for us to send out information and say we're going to work on this individual with this and that. Um, In order to be a narcissist, why am I in avoiding? Okay, here we go. In order to be a narcissist, according to the DSM, you would have to have a grandiose sense of self importance. They exaggerate their achievements. They feel like they have done more than what they have honestly done, right? Um, it's preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people. Require excessive admiration. Has a sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment. Um, it's it's interpersonal, takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own needs, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitude. Nothing in there talks about being violent. Those are the criteria that you would need in order to be considered an narcissists. Nothing in there says that they're violent. Now, what can happen is that they can carry other personalities in the cluster B that would then give them having one, the main narcissist personality with the following traits of this, and that, based off of what is being seen. But they main would just be a narcissist. So when we get to saying, oh, this individual is a narcissist, but we don't give the traits that would follow, then it's like, wait a minute. Listening as I am listening with an ear to understand and be able to help. If you tell me that person is narcissist based off of them being violent, I'm going to say they're not narcissists. Okay, that's not what that is. So then it's like, well, that's what they said. That's what I know because that's what social media is telling us. So I'm trying to get away from that and trying to help other people get away from that because it says in order to be diagnosed as a narcissist, you have to seek professional help. Why? Because professionals have been taught how to actually find the things that you are needing to properly help you. So now, with that being said, let's move on. We're gonna move on. I told you all I'm not editing any of this. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm not looking back over it. I'm going to upload it right on to YouTube. So yes, you get to see my belly, you get to see me propped up here, you get to see all of my imperfections, me stumbling over words, not being able to say them correctly. Reminds you I didn't read until I never told you all when I read. I didn't start reading until I was in my 20s. I was exactly 21 going on 22. And my niece is a reader and she came in one day and she said, Auntie, you got to read this book. My niece was unaware that I could not read. And I said, I can't read this. And she said, Yes, you can. I said, No, I can't. She said, Yes, you can. And I told her why I couldn't. Like, I don't know how to read. And she said, So you're going to make names to the word, to the names. And then you're going to just look in the definition and break down the word to how you can say the word. So I would find, like, for instance, say I couldn't say house, right? I would look up house and house is shelter. I would change house for shelter because I could say shelter. I would say that instead. So I basically made my own book and reading The Coldest Winter Ever. That is the first book that I ever read on my own. I did not stop once I started reading that book. I found out that I love reading and that is how it started. That is when I discovered I wasn't stupid either. Um, and I enjoyed learning. So now I mess up a lot of words. I mess up a lot of words. Why do I mess up a lot of words? Because it was a long time before I learned how. I was told that I would never honestly be able to read because I had missed learning, um, that learning opening. So it's like, you have a certain amount of time of things that are happening. I forget the words and how it's described, but you can look it up And so I was told I was never going to learn how to do those things. And I was like, oh, okay. But here I am. I learned how because you can't tell me what I'm going to do. I'm going to. What I say, I fight everything. So you told me I couldn't, and I'm going to fight against to be able to do so. So you hear me stumbling over words and not saying the word correctly. Um, Try to fill in the blank. Try to figure it out. And if it don't make any sense in the end, send me a comment, and then I'll tell you exactly what I was saying because I can tell you what I was saying. I can tell you exactly what I was saying, and that way you can get a better understanding. Okay, I have said here we go 3 times. Now this time here we go. So now I have decided to leave my ex-husband. I have decided that I don't want my son, who I am pregnant with, once I discover that I'm pregnant with him, um, to be brought up in that. It was so much trauma in that time that I ignored my pregnancy. I consider my pregnancy to be everything but a pregnancy. I thought him moving was gas, and I would try to go to the bathroom, and so I had developed hemorrhoids because I thought I'm not going to have another baby by this man. I wanted nothing else to do with this man at all. So was most definitely not going to have another baby by him. Me being tired was because I worked nights. I worked nights at Kroger's. I was a stocker at the time, and so I thought, well, that's why I'm tired because I work nights. And so, me being sick was because I was stressed out. I had an excuse for everything about not being pregnant until my mom, the one who is now deceased, she at this time she was suffering with cancer, and we were going. Her birthday is in November, and so her birthday and my mother's birthday are 4 days apart, which is weird. And so that she thought was going to be her last Thanksgiving, which it was, and she wanted us all to come and be with her. And I went. Okay, I lived in uh, Kentucky at the time, and I went. And when I got there, she said, "Key, you're pregnant." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm Mama. I am just fat." She said, "No, that's round." I was like, "No, that's fat." I look back over the pictures. I had on a gray shirt, I had on a ponytail, and I had on some jeans. I used to wear very big clothes back then because I was very ashamed of myself. I was ashamed of being fat. I was ashamed of being ugly. I was ashamed of having bigger lips, a big nose, and a big forehead. I was ashamed of all of those things. And so I wanted to cover it up in whatever way that I possibly could. And so what I would do is I would wear extremely big clothes. Um, so nobody can see it and then nobody can know I was fat, you know? And so I thought, no, no, that's not it. You can't even see my stomach because my clothes are so big. I look back at that, and lo and behold, you could see my stomach. This is the end of November. This child is born March, okay? He is born in March. And so I denied it. I denied it. I denied all of it. And until January, the end of January, I had an STD. And in having that STD, God has a way of exposing things that needs to be exposed. Okay. Um, with the STD, I never would like have to go to the emergency room. I would just go to the doctor. But at this time, I had to go to the emergency room. I was working one day and I just cramped really, really bad, really, really bad. And then I started bleeding, and it was like a smell that I'd never smelled before. And I went to the hospital. In the hospital, I remember the doctor saying, "Is there any way that you could be possible?" I'm sure the doctor is looking at me and saying she's pregnant, okay? But because I had wrote on the paper that I wasn't pregnant, the doctor said, is there any possible way that you can be pregnant?" I told him, "No, no, not at all." And so, of course, the doctor does a pregnancy test as they supposed to, and I'm pregnant. Okay, I'm pregnant. So they go in to find out how far because I also stated that I had a menstrual the month before. And I'm not sure if I did or I didn't. Like I said, at that time, I was very much so deassociating myself from the pain. I didn't want to be bothered with it anymore. If we were going to fight, we were going to fight. If we were going to argue, we were going to argue. I didn't want to know what was going on. Okay. And so I don't know if I did or I didn't have a menstrual. I don't know. All I know is that we're outside, so I'm checking the phone to see if it's getting hot. We may need to move to a more sheltered place. Let's do that real quick. Hold on. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Let's go over here. Well, it's a little shelter and see if we can get some shade. And that way we can continue without cutting off because if you have an iPhone, you know how it says the phone is too hot and it shuts off. Don't want it to shut off in the midst of us talking. Okay. I also don't like bugs, so I'm going to put up my feet. I don't like bugs, and bugs will crawl on me. Good God Almighty, just upset my spirit. So now, um, I don't know. I don't know if during that time I was having a menstrual or not. I don't know, but I do know I told him that. So he sent me in to get an ultrasound, and I asked the nurse, the tech that was doing it, how far was I? And she said she would have to let the doctor let me know. And I said, is the baby okay? And she said the doctor be in, the doctor tell you everything. I remember that. I remember that moment of discovering that I was pregnant. Man, when the doctor came in, he told me, he said, well, baby's due March. I said, oh, okay. Remind you, it's the end of January. So that means his due date was March 21st. He came March 18th. I had a month and a half to prepare for this here baby. Pulled it off, got it done, everything was good. That was it, right? But I still didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want that anymore. It didn't feel good anymore. It was exhausting after I gave birth to him. I had a slight breakdown and I was just tired, y'all. I was just tired. I was just overwhelmed with everything. I was growing, taking care of the kids, getting them up for school, having to pay people to keep them so I can go to work while he go out and sell his little drugs and mess with his women. I was tired. I was tired. I was tired of the fights and arguments and him not coming home and me worrying about where he was at because it is, 4 o'clock in the morning and he still isn't home. And because of the lifestyle he lived, I figured maybe something happened to him. Maybe maybe he was in jail. maybe maybe he had got, shot or maybe he's in the hospital. I didn't know. I was scared. I lived on the edge with him all the time. I didn't know if it was gonna be an argument, a fight. I was gonna put him out, keep him in. Um, I didn't know if he was gonna die or live. I didn't know if he was going to jail. He went back and forth to jail several times throughout this relationship. So I didn't know. I didn't know. I just didn't know. So I lived on the edge in here during this time, and I was tired of living on the edge. So after I gave birth to him, I found myself having a slight nervous breakdown. I remember reaching out and calling someone, and she came over and helped me because I just at this point I just wanted to die, and I didn't even understand why I wanted to die. But I realized, some things too at that time of why I wanted to die. We're going to get back to that, okay? We're going to get back to that. It makes sense to why I felt the way that I felt about a lot of things. Okay, it made sense. So now here I am. I decide I'm leaving, but I don't know how. I don't know how I'm leaving this guy, but I do. And you all are gonna find out. So now I leave and I go to my mom's. And I go to my mom's and I stay there and I start working as a bus driver. And then we move. And she's riding a senior citizen bus. Like it's like for people with, I don't want to say senior citizens. It's people that need extra help to get on the bus. It's like the community bus, but they take you places within the community that it covers. And so I'm riding. I'm out there one day waiting on her to be dropped off or picked up. I don't remember exactly which one. And one of the guys that picked up, he said, "Oh, you got your CDLs. You should come work with us. You know, you get a set schedule. You do this, you do that." And excuse me, I'm thirsty. He said, "Come work out there. Tell him I sent you, and I get a little bonus. La la la." So I did. While out there, I meet my husband. Whew. Let me tell y'all something. In the midst of life, things happen. And we don't understand why they happen. We always think like we in such a control of everything, and we are the gods of our lives. I don't know who believes in God, who don't. Okay, I'm not putting no religion on nobody. I'm not putting no God on anybody. I believe in God. Okay, and I'm a very spiritual person. If I had to assign to any religion, it would be Islam. I don't judge anything because at the end of it, I believe we have to make the decision from the choice that was given to us. I hope that makes sense to some people. Some people it may not. So now anyway, I see this piece of hair and it's driving me crazy. Y'all probably gonna find out more about me in this little thing than I wanted y'all to know. Okay, like I'm so ODD. Like it's this around and that's around, and I'm like a squirrel all over the place all the time. Like that's how I talk, right? But I get back to what I'm talking about. I don't lose focus. I just squirrel. I look over there, right? So now we think that we're in total control of things, but the universe is truly in control. Okay, and people are put places, and situations are put places, and things happen for so many different reasons that we really don't know. We're gonna get to that part. So I meet my husband. In meeting him, I fall in love with this man. I've never loved any man. I didn't love my first husband. Remember, I told you all I thought I was in love because I was young. And when he came home, the only reason I married him is because I felt sorry. So I felt like I was supposed to because it was my fault. But now that I got old, I realized I can't take responsibility for that, right? So I work here. I meet this man who I am not attracted to. But I grew up at a time in my life with a woman who taught me how to hustle and how to survive and how to make it and how to use people and how to get what I want when I need. That's what she taught me. Ruby, right? That's Ruby. That's Ruby right there. Ruby had an accident in my car when I needed a way to work. I needed to take care of my kids. I needed to supply and do for my children. Because at this time, my ex husband is in prison. And so I am solely by myself. Um, my ex husband's cousin had filled me in on some things that were going on in his life. And they let me know he was vulnerable. It let me know at that time he was weak. I ain't sounding that nice right now, am I? I know it. I know it. I know it. Hey, I'm not gonna lie to y'all though. I'm not gonna lie to you all about anything I've ever done as this time continue to keep going. Y'all have questions and I'm gonna give you answers because I want you to understand how to overcome those things, right? I meet this man. My intentions are not to do anything with him but to use him. That's it. I just need a ride to work, and I knew he would do it because what she had basically told me was that he was gullible. Cool. I ain't got to work hard. I just go in and get what I need and get the money I need real quick and buy me a car and go on about my way. It was about to be income tax time. I have the money and that'd be it. Didn't work like that. Didn't work like that. It wasn't because he didn't do what I needed him to do. He did exactly what I needed him to do. He came in, he went to work, took me to work, picked me up from work. He did all those things. But in the midst of that, I fell in love with dude. I don't know why. I don't know why, because once again, I wasn't attracted to him. Okay. Um, he's 5'5", as I mentioned to you all. I'm 5'8". So he's 5'5". I am a very dominant woman. Ruby is my mother. At this time, I am very much so still hostile in life because that's the way that I know to be. Um, I have 3 children. My self esteem is extremely low. My confidence isn't high at all. Like, but I know how to use my body to get what I want. You all remember I spoke about that where I didn't care about sex. It didn't bother me one way or another. I could do it. And when you do it in such a way that I do, and most women like myself who have been taken advantage of, we have some qualities that other women don't have, right? We do some things that other women don't do. If I had to describe myself the right way, I would be a streetwalker. I would be the prostitute because I give a man the fantasy of what he thought he was going to have forever and what he thought was the best thing ever because you ain't getting this at home. Okay? That's what I wanted, that's what I knew. I knew if nothing else, men were stupid to the woman when it came. to being manipulated with sex. A vulnerable man is the worst thing to a manipulative woman. But the good thing about this guy that I married, he did have some discipline. He did. He didn't just fall for me giving him sex. That wasn't it. He wanted to get to know me. He wanted to learn some things about me. He wanted to be my friend, and I was like, what? Why? I don't want to be your friend. I don't. I just want to give you some and keep you around until I don't need you anymore. And then you can go on and do what you want to do. I don't want anything else from you. Nah. He was like, I don't want to do that. I don't. I don't. I don't want to do that. So he didn't do that. We're married still. I fell in love with the indifference of him. I fell in love with the loyalty. He showed me a softer side of myself that I had never ever seen before. Um, he showed me it was okay to be okay. He protected me in a way that I had never been protected by a man. He allowed me a moment to heal because he allowed me a moment to be still. Because of that, I told him, you're going to hurt me. You're going to be the one to break me. I thought I had been broken before. I thought that I had already felt the wrath of a man. I felt that being hit by a man, because that's what you hear, that's the worst thing in the world, is to be hit. I thought I'd already felt all that. I felt like I had already gone through the breaking of a man and finding myself again. I thought that. That's what I thought. No. No, I hadn't. I hadn't. I hadn't. But I'm about to. I'm about to. I'm about to find out what it truly feels like to be hurt. And by a person that you truly love. Not one that you can just get up and walk away from. Not one that you can just say, fuck it. It's one that you even make excuses for and give reasoning for their behavior. I'm about to find out. And when I tell you I do, I do. And there were some things that happened in that finding that we are going to talk about. Right now, let me tell you about my relationship with Cunningham. Be back in a sec.